Good day to you all. We're going to talk today about the migratory and settlement patterns of indigenous peoples in the Caribbean. We're going to talk about those things. And there are three concepts important in this question. And another thing that is important, and I'm going to use something for that, focus is describe the migratory and settlement patterns of indigenous people up to the arrival of the Spanish in 1492. So this is our main goal of this video and some others, is that after a while you should be able to describe the migratory and settlement patterns of indigenous peoples in the Caribbean. This is something that you should be able to do after a while. Yeah, and it handles chapter 1 of Caribbean history for CSEC. Yeah. First, migratory, settlement patterns, and indigenous. Those concepts I really want to talk with you guys about. Before we can start, migratory. Migratory means actually that, I will use a pen for this, migratory means that from the Guianas, for instance, or for instance, coming from Middle America, people came and migrated to the Caribbean. Yeah. So migration means that they traveled from one place to another, people who travel from one place to another. Settlement is like they came from Middle America and they settled to Jamaica, or they settled to Puerto Rico, or from the Guianas, they sailed all the way to Puerto Rico. Yeah, so these things are settlement. You stay in one place. And indigenous are, of course, the first peoples who did that. Our ancestors, the Homo sapiens. Homo betekent man, Homo significa man, and sapient means the smart man. Yeah, okay. So migratory patterns, settlement patterns, and indigenous patterns. It means you don't have to know everything. It's about the patterns, not about everything, but just about the patterns. Yeah, patterns means actually for the global sketch of it all. Not all of the details, but the global changes. And again, this is all about, yeah, the goal for the coming classes describe the migratory and settlement patterns of the indigenous peoples of the Caribbean up to the arrival of the Spanish in 1492. Okay, back to our presentation. Yeah, the focus can be out. Put it out. Yeah, we can. Okay, next. The Bering Strait migration waves and ancient boat design. Yeah, looking at this map, it's important that you see that this is North America. Yeah, with in the corner a piece of South America, and in the left corner this whole map. That is how it works. Well, you see in the middle the Bering Strait. That's a piece of sea, and to the right of you Alaska, very cold, and to the left of you Russia, actually Siberia. And this is about the question about how did the first Homo sapiens, how did the first people came to what we now call North America. Well, the first wave, because it wasn't different waves, the first wave came 14,000 years ago. 12,000 BC, before Christ, archaeologists and other scientists, they've put the marker there that the first ones that we know of must have come 14,000 years ago. That is 12,000 BC. So this first wave walked or sailed to Alaska. Walking here, because this was frozen in the Ice Age. So this part was frozen during Ice Age, so that people could walk that. But we also here have the Aleut Islands, and perhaps they went island hopping and traveled it by boats, going from island to the next island, and so in this way arriving in what we now call America. And after that, archaeologists and other scientists have deduced that 12,000 years ago the second wave came. And we know the first wave stayed more in South America. So the first wave stayed more in South America. The second wave, though, reached only North America. And also, third is important that in the beginning, people used to think that they went island hopping and went from North America to South America. But archaeologists and other scientists, they discovered that the people around 10,000 years ago had an ancient boat design, and they had a fin on it to make a decision about which direction they had to go. So they were pretty advanced, and probably they could go greater distances, even those from Trinidad to Puerto Rico and other islands, more than 500 kilometers, and they could sail the Caribbean. So bigger distances in the Caribbean were also possible for those people. Sea currents and paddlers taking shifts. Yeah, this is a bit of geography, and I know that you don't have geography at school, but the historians, when looking at what happened, they long assumed island hopping. They assumed that the people they went by land, they went to South America, and then from there, from Trinidad, they went island hopping from one island to the other. That is what they long assumed. So, leaving from Trinidad here and then to one island to another, like island hopping. And the sea currents, they support this theory because the sea current goes from south to north and from east to west. So this theory of island hopping, that the first people hopped from island to island, that is one major theory. The archaeologists came back from this because they discovered that the sea currents favor northwest and east-west. This is what I just told you. The sea currents are, that you can see here, these are the currents, and you can see that they can go from south to north and from east to west. So if people travel by boat, these are logical directions to go, and these are logical directions to go. And even the trade winds, they enforce these directions. They help. Trade winds are coming from the Atlantic and the direction of Europe, very far away. But the archaeologists, they discovered it was different because recent archaeological evidence from Venezuela to Puerto Rico. Venezuela is about here, and Puerto Rico is here. We find the same archaeological findings there. So probably, we've discovered that probably the people could also sail from Trinidad and Tobago, the long distance, a few hundred perhaps, could sail that because they had long canoes, they could take shifts, and they had a fin to estimate their direction. And by using this, they could gain a lot of distance. And they didn't just have to wait for the sea currents and the trade winds. They had a certain technology to achieve this. Yes. Okay. So there are two ways of traveling for those people. to migrate. One is using the trade winds. No, one is using the currents backed up by the trade winds, but they also had their own technology. The archaeology proves that. And they could travel great distances. Yeah, we've discovered that. Okay. Why did people settle here in this island area? Yeah. Why didn't they stay mainland in Middle America or South America? And why did they take up the journey to go on the water, to make boats, and to go discovering? Why did they do that? Now, one is food, game and land. Game is a word in English for actually small animals and small sea animals. So the islands contain a lot of game, like iguanas and small rodents and small birds and small sea life. So they could hunt for that, and they could do agriculture on the islands. Yeah, the food was an important reason. Second reason is they could form their own communities. So they had their reasons to escape the bigger community and form a community of their own. Third, they could avoid enslavement. And enslavement, I'm talking related to this about the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Incas. The Mayans had a huge empire here, roughly spoken, and the Incas, they had an empire in Peru. Yeah, and these had major empires, also fighting against each other, having wars against other people, and avoiding enslavement probably also was a big reason for this. And fourth, yes, the urge to explore. People want to explore, like now in outer space, and back then, the urge to see what was out there, to see what islands were out there, how they could make a living of their own, to see new things in their life. Like now, it is for a lot of people, must have been very important for those people back then. Why do we not know for sure how many people lived in the Caribbean before 1492? Well, 1492 is the number of the arrival of Columbus, and that thus begins the age of the Spanish and the Portuguese and the Europeans. But before that, we don't know exactly how much people lived in the Caribbean. We know it was somewhere between 750,000 and 6 million, but this is a really big range. Yeah. And why didn't Columbus count? They didn't tally. What is a difficult word for count them? To hold an official counting of the people. And Columbus just wrote an infinite number. He didn't know what the important message for him was to the king and queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella. They should know there are a lot of people here that we can trade with, that can work for us, that we can make Catholic. And indigenous people had no counting system that was huge enough to count all of the people. It wasn't important for them also. They didn't have a system of government and taxes as the Europeans did during those ages. Because the indigenous people had no counting system outside those of the hands or bigger numbers. Yeah. The Mayans had, by the way, and the Incas had, and the Aztecs had, but the people in the Caribbean did not have a counting system that was large enough to count the people. The work of archaeologists and linguists. Well, the end goal is to describe the migration patterns and the settlement patterns up to the arrival of Columbus in 1492. But to understand how do we notice the migration patterns and the settlement patterns, we have to know something about the work of archaeologists and linguists. Yeah? How does this work? How do those work? How do they know so much about the people that lived in the Caribbean? And how do linguists, by studying the language, also learn a lot about the people? Archaeologists, they use all kinds of findings, pottery, hunting instruments, um, stone knives and stone axes, but also buildings and also remains of people to study them. They do like professional dating of them, but also by looking at them, they can gather a lot of information. They can estimate how old they are, sometimes by looking at them, sometimes by using carbon dating, but they also group them into ages, like the classical age and the archaic age and the lithic age. So dependent on what the people used, stone and coral, make buildings, they group them into ages. Like we have like the baby age and the child age and the puberty age. Also the history of a people can also be grouped into ages. From that, from the findings, we can deduce how they lived, what they did, if they had a religion or not, if they had a form of surgery or healthcare. For instance, if you find arrows somewhere, arrow points, you know they hunted. Yeah. So if you find images of strange beings in color, you perhaps know that they had a religion and perhaps had gods. So you can deduce from your findings what kind of people they were. Linguists can analyze words that are the same between two kinds of people. If people have same or similar nouns, like verbs or describing words for something, they probably had contact with each other. For instance, if two people have the same word for pottery, probably they exchange pottery. If two kinds of people have the same name for an iguana, then probably they had contact with each other and lived on islands with both had iguanas. So if people have the same or similar nouns, verbs, or words for things, then they probably made contact with each other. Unfortunately, no spoken indigenous languages are left in the Caribbean. Two reasons for that. One, a lot of people died of smallpox in the century after Columbus, so the 16th century, and also a lot of the traditional crops of the people of the Caribbean were destroyed. So a lot of, like tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands people died because of the Spanish and the germs that they brought and the violent things that they did. But we do know on our island you have the Divi Divi and the Wara Wara and other names in Papiamentu that come from the Taino and the Kagatillo and the Arawak that lived on our islands. So we have inherited inside of our language a lot of original Kagatillo words. And those can be studied by linguists. But it is true, as a whole, but a few languages in the Caribbean survive, if even they survived. Just a few fragments of them most of the time. Okay, this is my first video for Forms 3. I hope it was explanatory. I hope it helped. I hope it could clear up a lot of stuff. It was about, not this one, but this one. Chapter 1, Caribbean History for CSEC. The goal was to describe the migratory and settlement patterns of indigenous peoples in the Caribbean up to the arrival of the Spanish in 1492. That is a goal that we are aiming at the coming lessons and also the coming videos. If you have questions, ask them below or in my classroom or during class. And you can also email me also. Yeah.